What's up, everybody? It is Tuesday. Listen, can you tell I'm excited? Why am I excited? I'm excited because it has been a while since I've done a show. I did one show in January and it was just me by myself. And then there were some things that happened, and I'll talk about it a little bit more in the monologue. But there were some things that happened, and so there weren't any shows, but we are back. This is the life of an entrepreneur. If you are new to this, here's what I tell everybody, and I say it at the beginning of every show. Whatever you use to take notes on, whether you are a pen and paper person or you are an electronic device person, you need to be prepared to take notes. We have a wonderful guest. Every guest that we've had has been phenomenal, and today is no different. If you're new to this show, make sure you go back and watch other episodes of this show. We have changed a few things. We're changing some of the places we're actually streaming from. It's still on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn, but we're using the Love Entrepreneurs LinkedIn page for some of this stuff. So you'll get familiar with where we are and where we've moved around to, but stick with us. We got a great show. I am excited. You know, I say all this all the time. The life of an entrepreneur is a journey, and we want you to enjoy the journey. So strap in, get ready for another episode of The Life of an Entrepreneur. Let's go. Yes, indeed. We are back. We are back. This is The Life of an Entrepreneur. I am your host, Oliver Marcel, author, speaker, and coach in the relationship building and men's enrichment spaces, with the goal being to do what's on my t-shirt. What's on my t-shirt? 2020 before hindsight. 2020 before hindsight is the mantra that I live by. Let me explain it to you. There are so many things that I have learned the hard way: pitfalls, banging my head up against the wall, bad mistakes, terrible choices, all that kind of thing, right? My goal is to help at least one person gain some level of clarity on the front end before they do something, say something, become something, hang out with somebody, make a decision that will throw off the trajectory of their lives. That is my life's mission. And you can support that mission because it's actually my t-shirt. For those of you who don't know that, it is my t-shirt. So you could actually purchase one of these t-shirts. And in the description, wherever you are watching this, you will see a link where you could do that. I would be so grateful if you would support me in that way. It's the life of an entrepreneur, and it's sponsored by Love Entrepreneurs. If you're not familiar with what Love Entrepreneurs is, you got to get familiar with what Love Entrepreneurs is. It is a group of business owners, a fellowship of individuals with the sole goal, purpose being to help ordinary people build extraordinary businesses. And they do that in a number of ways. One of them is the Big Fix. That's their signature dish. We'll talk a little bit about the Big Fix a little later as we talk to my guest, but you need to get familiar with Love Entrepreneurs. It is a phenomenal space to be in. If you are a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, and you are looking for a community of folks who will rally around you and they want to see you thrive, they desire for you to win, that's the space that you want to be in. Okay, we got a great guest, and I'm not going to do a too long of a monologue because I am excited to get Hayley Wheeler in today. Listen, Hayley Wheeler is a performance coach, a therapist, a speaker. That only scratches the surface of her expertise and what she does, and we're going to hear more from her in just a minute. Here's what I want to share today, very briefly. I talked about the fact that this is really my first show back since the year started. We're in February. I took some time in January to do what I call what was called a pause. the word fast, the word pause. There's different ways to describe that. But part of what I did was step away from a few things, one of them being social media, a few other things that I kind of stepped back from, just to kind of clear the space, the mental space, if you will, for some opportunity to gain some clarity, to really think through some things, to make some decisions, to brainstorm, to vision cast, all of these different things that happen. And it was a beneficial time for me. Many of you may remember, if you watched a previous episode, that I do something like this in December as well. Here's where I'm going with that. It is important that you are intentional about your self care. That's a word that's been thrown around a whole lot lately. And here's the one thing I want to tell you. The one thing I want to tell you is, do not make that a separate entity from all of the other things that you do in life. Let me explain. Often what I do is, I know that there are things like exercise and getting up and walking around, and there's various other things that, reading and just taking a break to just take deep breaths and do other things. Often I push through my work because I feel like, in order to do those things, I have to take away from the work time that I'm doing. What I've started to do now is incorporate that into the time. So, just as you would put a meeting on your calendar, and you would put a lunch date on your calendar, or a lunch and learn on your calendar, you should also be incorporating the elements of self care that are necessary for you and that are priorities. So, if exercise is a priority, if taking time out to read for 30 minutes is a priority, if going for a walk is a priority, whatever those things are that allow you to refresh, allow you to clear the space, allow you to lessen the mental load and increase your mental stamina, those need to be incorporated into your daily routine. They cannot be separate from. You can't feel like, oh, you know what, I got to break away from this so that I can go do that, because that perspective will not allow you to be consistent. If you take the perspective that this is just as an important part of my day as the meeting that I have in 3 hours, you will look at that a lot differently, and you will begin to, I don't want to necessarily say balance. I have to be careful about that. You will begin to achieve harmony. How about that? And harmony is important as we go about building our lives. This life of an entrepreneur is a journey, and you can't run out of gas before the journey ends. And in order to begin to refuel and refresh so that you can continue to keep going, you have to incorporate that into your trip. Just like if I was taking a road trip that was going to be 30 hours, I have to incorporate stops into that trip. I have to use a bathroom. I have to get more gas. There's other things that have to take place. I can't, well, me personally, sometimes I do get frustrated that I have to stop because I would rather keep going. But if I keep going, then I run out of gas. And guess what? I'm forced to stop. And the same thing happens in life. You can keep doing this and keep running and gunning and not putting in the time that you need to really be intentional about your self care, and you will be forced to stop at some point. So, before we get to that point, how about we just change our perspective and add that into our daily routine? All right. That's what I have for you today. I hope that that is helpful for you, and you put it into practice. All right. Listen, we got to get to our guests. Again, we have Hayley Wheeler. Hayley Wheeler is a performance coach, a speaker, a therapist. We're going to let her come in and introduce herself and tell us how she serves the world. So without further ado, introducing Hayley Wheeler. Hey, 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 hey. How are you? You're muted.
Hi, Oliver. Thanks for the warm welcome. I'm really looking forward to this today.
Indeed, indeed. It is my pleasure to have you as a guest today on the show. Listen, let's jump right in. Tell us who you are. Tell us what you do, how you serve the world, and we'll get into the conversation.
So, I'm Hayley Wheeler. I help people who are currently stuck reliving past trauma in therapy say goodbye to that cycle. I cracked the code myself with my own battle with depression, and I designed my 6-step program as a quick path to letting go, reclaiming your power, and living emotionally free. And it's such a huge thing. What you were saying earlier about the self-care, amazing.
Wow. So you said you went through this.
I did.
So, and here's what's interesting, Hayley. I I can almost bet money on this that a large percentage, if not all, of the people who move into their passion, that passion is often birthed out of something personal.
Absolutely. I think to become an entrepreneur, you tend to have been at some low point, whether it's emotionally, practically, physically, you'll have learned some big lesson from adversity.
I agree. So, if you don't mind, would you mind taking us back? So, what was the, and as much as you want to share, or as little as you want to share, what was the journey? Because you said that this was something you went through, and as a result of that, you found this passion and developed this process for individuals to gain transformation. What was the journey that brought you to the point where you're like, wait a minute, I need to do this for others?
So I didn't really know at the time. So my journey with depression probably started in 2004. So I
Okay.
had my second son and I ended up with postnatal depression, but I completely ignored it. I filled out the form that they gave, the health visitor gives, in a way that I knew would make it that seem like I was doing okay. And that kind of came and it went. And then in 2006, on my third child, I had my second bout of postnatal depression. And this is when I first reached out for help. And it was not a good response.
Mm,
The health visitor sent me for bibliotherapy, so go and pick up some books from the library, and a referral to a counselling service, which never came through. Now, my daughter's 17, I haven't heard anything from that counselling service. But again, that experience came and went. But then in 2010, I found myself really slipping, and things weren't going as well as I thought they should be. I wasn't coping with life as well as I had in the past. And just my days became about getting through from the morning to the night. And I started to learn as a coping strategy. So for 2 years, I worked full time with 4 children, and then I studied on top of that full time hours because it was the thing that was holding me together. But then when I got learned out, I kind of just put learning aside, but that's when the spiral started to happen. And I didn't ask for help then, but I knew there was something wrong. I wasn't admitting it to myself. So I was just getting through my day. I was sleeping about 2 to 4 hours a night. And I was getting up in the morning, getting myself ready for the day. And my day was just on repeat constantly, apart from the occasional, it would be rugby instead of football, athletics instead of rugby. And my days were long, and I just needed to get through them every single day just to feel like I'd survived. So that went on for another 2 years until I finally reached out to a counsellor who didn't know. The counselling was something else. The counselling was more for marriage counselling at the time. So the counsellor didn't know. I didn't tell her. I went to counselling with a smile on my face, didn't tell her what I was struggling with. So on the session that I went, I discovered that it was my last session. She said that she couldn't help me anymore, but she also made an observation about my parenting. And that was in the beginning of 2015. And then that sent me spiraling.
mm,
Because I thought that I was doing really well as a parent. Being a good parent was so important to me that even when my days were tough and I didn't want to get out of bed, I would take the kids to the park, I would take them swimming, I would do all the things that allowed them to make memories. So when she made that observation about my parenting, it just knocked me for six.
mm,
So by the July of 2015, I hit rock bottom the first time. And I still wasn't ready to help myself at that point. But then the second time I hit rock bottom was the October. and I had this really dark and devastating thought, and I knew I had to do something, or I had to walk away from my children. And I couldn't walk away from my children. They are my world. They're my absolute world. So at the same time, I discovered my son had been born, the one that was born in 2004, he'd been born with anxiety. So I
Mm-hmm.
set to work helping him. He was my motivation and my motivator. I got him from 8 to 9 panic attacks a day to nothing. And he hasn't had anything in 7.5 years now. And then I started working on myself, and it took me another 2 years to get to the point where I stabilized after a year, and then I found the happiness again that really goes missing. There was no passion, no excitement, no joy in my life. Even though my children were everything to me, I just couldn't feel that joy. So it took me 2 years, and then it took me to create an Emotion Mind Dynamic because I wanted to help other people, because I knew what it was like to be there.
Wow, that's an incredible story, man. That so I could. I'm gonna be careful not to ask you a ton of questions because I don't want. I told you I was gonna only keep you for a certain amount of time, but that story is so riveting. You said your child was your motivation and your motivator, right? What what would you say to that person? Because here's the thing: there's so many people who experience what you've experienced that don't say anything. And I'm sure that you can attest to this. There are way more people that are dealing with anxiety and depression than we probably even know. And there are people who are dealing with it and they don't realize that's what it is. They just feel like they're in a funk for some reason, or they're just at a standstill for some reason, or things just aren't going right for some reason, not knowing that it's really aligned with some level of anxiety and depression. What would you say are some initial signs that someone really should start looking for assistance?
I think the inability to cope with very small things throughout your day, do you know, daily living things that you would have coped with 2 months ago, 6 months ago, all of a sudden they become like mountains to climb. So if you're feeling that just those small tasks that you would do are tough, on top of that, maybe you have lost all kind of sense of excitement or passion or joy, and then you're irritable with the children, or you're impatient with people, you're kind of losing yourself and losing your temper at things that really wouldn't bother you 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 2 years ago. Those are kind of signs that maybe it's time to just speak to a friend, or just ask somebody what they're seeing, because that's a really good way, actually. If you ask somebody else what they're seeing in your behavior, they'll tell you. We tend to try and pretend we're doing okay, so we don't see all those things.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And that's good information for those of you who are watching or might be watching the replay. Great information for you to then now evaluate where you are and what are some of the things that are happening in the spaces around you so that you become aware, because part of that road to transformation is that awareness, that self-awareness that takes place to allow you to even recognize where you are as opposed to where you want to be. That's phenomenal. Now let me ask you, are you married?
I'm now separated.
You were married during that time?
Yes.
Okay. Now this is a personal question for me because you know I live in the marriage space. And so during that period of time where you were battling with this, what was the effect on, this is a two-part question. What was the effect, if any, on your marriage? And the second part of that question is, what would you say to a spouse who has to support someone who is moving through that?
For me, I didn't say anything to anybody, so I would slap a smile on my face outside of the house,
Mhm,
and people didn't know.
mhm,
In the house, my mood would change. So there was I think everybody just thought I was just having a rough time with business and I was just having a rough time with life. But because I didn't ask for help, nobody really questioned it. My husband didn't question it.
Mm.
I felt like I was failing as a wife, as a mother anyway. So there was no real communication about it. And you will find that you will lose that communication. So being able to communicate. I did learn one technique of communicating with my children, not necessarily with my husband. And it did work to help a little bit every day. On the days that it was extremely bad, I would say to the children, today is not the day to push my buttons. And they would know. So they kind of had an inkling, but my ex-husband didn't have that inkling, that, or didn't want to question, didn't want to ask, didn't want to probe. And that we lost that connection.
Okay. So in hindsight, then, let's say I'll use myself. So I'm the husband. My wife is going through this. She has not really been vocal about it. And so as such, I'm either oblivious or I'm just taking what I see at face value, but not really digging any deeper. What would you say in hindsight to that person like me who may be witnessing these things and not really realizing that they should be maybe probing or going deeper?
I think a lovely question to ask is, can I do anything for you?
Okay.
Because you're not coming at it from, you get really defensive. So if someone says to you, is there something wrong? You start to think this, that they're attacking you. So by coming at it from the angle of, is there something I can support you with? Is there something I can do for you? How can I make your day better? You may not get the response you're looking for, but you are opening the door ready for when they're ready to open up.
Gotcha.
Because the door can feel closed. It can feel locked.
Wow.
But when somebody comes at it from an angle of, what can I do for you? It just, even for today, it leaves the door open, gives somebody some hope that somebody is going to listen when I'm ready.
I love the imagery. You said that the door can feel locked. It's one thing for the door to be closed. Like the door to my office is now closed, but it's not locked. So I know that even though it's closed, there's an opportunity for me to leave because I just need to push it open. But that feeling, man, the imagery behind that feeling, that in my head, in my body, my mental, physical space around me, I feel like I'm locked in. That's incredible. And I love the fact that you now have created something to help not only unlock that space, but to help them transform out of that space. We'll talk about that in just a second. Elaine Godley is in the comments. Hello, Elaine. She said hi to both of us. She said, personal experience of what you teach others gives you the credibility, Hayley. That's awesome. And the beauty of it is, because many of our passions are birthed out of a personal space, often a personal space of pain, if I want to even hone in a little bit more, that in and of itself gives you the green light to help others. And what I tell people often in the Big Fix, and we'll talk about the Big Fix in a little while, often what I tell people in the Big Fix is that, and I might have even said this to you in your Big Fix, is that people are going to do two things when you tell your story. One, they're going to resonate with you, either because they have gone through it, they are going through it, or they know somebody who has gone through it. The second thing is they're going to crave the transformation that you achieved. because now you sit in front of us after telling that gripping story. You sit in front of us transformed, and not only transformed, but passionate about seeing transformation in others. That is awesome. So tell us about, obviously without giving too much proprietary information away, because what we want is for folk to come and work with Hayley, right? So talk about your program now, and what people can expect to receive and achieve by working with you.
So when I work with adults, I work over 6 sessions. Sessions are, because of the deep-rooted work that we do, they can be up to 4 hours long.
Mm,
But that always feels really comfortable for clients because they have the space to say whatever they need to say. So my focus really is on getting to the emotional root and letting that go. Release all the emotional baggage and that trauma that you're carrying
mhm.
so that you can move forward. And I think it's something that is missing from therapy. So aside from that main thread, we look at things like self-esteem, values, relationships, boundaries. There's so many things that we don't understand about ourselves, which it really frustrates me that we don't teach children and adults this kind of thing about themselves. So my motto is self-knowledge is a superpower. So we will go deep and really figure out who you are, what the depression, anxiety is doing for you, and release all of the stuff that's holding you stuck.
That's good. I love that. Say that again. Self knowledge is
A superpower.
superpower. Wow. Listen, that's a quotable right there. Self knowledge is a superpower, and you are providing that superpower to others. Man, it's incredible. Like you said, some of the sessions can be up to 4 hours long.
Yeah,
Wow. That sounds, on the outside looking in, that sounds daunting. But I'll tell you what I felt when you said that, and I think that's because we're in similar spaces, is that denotes some really intensive work that's being done. And I appreciate that. And let me tell you why I appreciate that. Often, and you even said this when you were telling your story, you said that you went to somebody and it was terrible. They just had you read some books and then didn't even follow through, right? And often we see so many instances where somebody comes to you with a problem, they are longing for transformation, and you just give them some fly by night, quotes out of a book, and you know and give them some buzzwords, and tell them some concepts, and then think they're going to be okay. And it takes more than that.
mm,
Sometimes it takes putting your hard hat on and getting down in the dirt and digging through some things and fighting through some things and working through some things. And it sounds like the program that you provide does that in an incredible way. I love it. Listen, we're going to talk about how you can get in touch with Hayley a little later on, because if you're not convinced already, then I don't know what's going to convince you. Just hearing her story, hearing what she does for people, if you realize, and based on some of the indicators that Hayley shared, if you realize that this is something that is necessary for you, you need to reach out to her. Neil is in the comments. What's up? What's up, bro? Haven't seen you in a while, man. We need to get together, man, and catch up. Neil said it takes getting dirty, and it does. Sometimes there's some really difficult but very significant work that needs to take place.
absolutely. Otherwise, it doesn't change.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. So since you said that, talk about that, because how do you get people who come to you and they want something that they're not willing to work for?
Well, yes, people will come and they will say things like, I will do anything. But we
Mhm.
all have our limits, don't we? Even when we say we'll do anything. So it generally means I will do anything that I am comfortable doing, and I push them out of that comfort zone. And there's only one client I've ever said that I can't take his money if he doesn't complete the process.
Mhm.
I can't do that. He's the only person that really, he was refusing. But to be fair to him, he did push through. You have to really, you have to want to do it, and you have to want to step out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, you do. And I love that you said that, because there's something that I tell when I'm working with couples. There's two questions I ask every couple in the discovery call. And the first question is, take some time to identify your ideal marriage. So what is the transformation you actually want to live out? And then the follow-up question is, once they identify that, is, are you willing to do whatever it takes to achieve that? And then I go into whatever, like stuff you didn't know how to do, stuff you've never seen done, stuff you don't want to do, stuff you feel like isn't necessary to do. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And then, like you have people who are like, yes, I'll do whatever. Tell me whatever. But I love what you said. What we're essentially saying is we're going to do whatever we feel is comfortable. And if you're looking for, no transformation happens with comfort. None. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know any transformation that you could just rest back on your laurels and it's going to happen. If you work out, you got to tear some muscles. You got to sweat. You got to do something. You got to come out of the comfort. If you build in a house, you got a hammer. You got a nail. There's dust. There's all this stuff before the beautiful house. Whatever it is, there's some level of work, grit, dirt that has to be uncovered and dealt with.
Absolutely. And you have to want to dig, and you have to, unfortunately with my role, I suppose it's about that emotional pain. Mm-hmm. We're more likely to want to go through physical pain than we are emotional pain. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this really is, it really is at most outside of most people's comfort zone, because we don't talk about emotions in society. We don't allow people to express emotions in society. So this is a skill to learn. As we're going along, we're learning those skills as well.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Neil said, I find it challenging to love people that say they want transformation, but aren't willing to work for it. And there are a lot of folk who want transformation and aren't willing to work for it. So let's be clear. You're going to get to find out later how you can work with Hayley, but let's be clear. If you work with Hayley, you're going to have to work. Keyword is work. If you want to work with Hayley, come prepared to work. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. Let's be clear about that. So Hayley, you did a big fix.
Yes, I did.
And we're going to talk about that in just a second. For those of you who are not aware of what the big fix is, we'll talk about what the big fix is in just a moment. The big fix is the signature dish of Love Entrepreneurs, which is a fellowship of entrepreneurs and business people with the sole goal of building extraordinary businesses. They want to see you win, and they do something called a big fix, which is, think mastermind, think sitting in the hot seat mastermind, and you get to share all about your business. And it's for everyone, whether you are on one end of the spectrum and all you have is your business name and idea, or maybe not even a name, you just have an idea and you want to flush that idea out, all the way to the other end of the spectrum, people who have been in business 10, 15, 20 years. Everybody can benefit from this experience. You get to sit in front of folks from all industries, all walks of life, share your vision for your business, share your pain points, share your questions, share your challenges. And the sole purpose of the group is to pour everything into you: ideas, suggestions, potential collaborations, everything that you can think of to help build your business. Let me go to Neil in the comments, and then we'll go to a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about Hayley's experience with the big fix. Neil says, physical pain as a man is easier to heal. Indeed. Absolutely. The emotional stuff, the mental stuff, the psychological stuff is really where you got to dig your heels in, really where you need some intention. And Hayley can help provide you with that. I appreciate you, Neil. Neil said Oliver is the man. I appreciate you, man. That's love. I am grateful for you, man, and your support. So let's take a quick break. Let's look at, I'm going to share something from my friend Sarah, who's talking about the big fix. And after that, we'll be back with Hayley.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Mills, and I've been an entrepreneur since 2010. I'm the vegan, healthy living business mentor, helping people thrive in business and life with super sexy, award-winning products, programs, and communities globally. The Big Fix is a fantastic platform to share your business vision, with like-minded entrepreneurs who have already walked in your shoes and are so willing to support and inspire and cheer your journey and success every step of the way. To see people transforming with new ideas and new commitment is magic. I know the obstacles faced by entrepreneurs is the same wherever we are in the world. Love Entrepreneurs connects people nationally and now internationally to thrive together.
That was Sarah Mills talking about her experience with the Big Fix. We're going to talk with Hayley about her experience with the Big Fix as well. Neil says, Hayley, thank you for sharing. And yes, thank you for sharing indeed. Your story is powerful. I love hearing a story of transformation. Like I could listen to transformational stories all day long, right? And to hear what you've experienced, the dark days, the dark times, the moments that were like, okay, wait a minute, the rock bottom places, and then that uphill process to get you to where you are right now, helping your child, and then now subsequently helping all of the individuals that cross your path. That's commendable. It's awesome. It is completely awesome. So you got to sit in this hot seat that we're talking about.
I did.
Talk to me about it. What did you think of your experience?
So I really felt I wanted to get the most out of it. So I mentally prepared. So for a couple of weeks beforehand, I was really getting myself ready for what could feel like criticism. So I was preparing myself for that. I wanted to hear what people had to say. So I wanted to be open to that. So I needed to open myself up to allowing that to happen. And I wanted to just receive everything that was given, because I know it was given with love, even if it feels sometimes harsh. So by the time I got there, I was quite relaxed. I felt ready for it. I'd prepared, I had everything written that I wanted to say. I had it all kind of set up, ready, probably to make it easier for myself, actually, and not to have to stress about it. And then on the day, it was just brilliant to hear from so many different people's perspectives, their opinions, their thoughts, their questions even. Because even their questions sort of got you thinking about, is that something I think about? Is that something I need to be thinking about? So it was an amazing experience. And I think if you go into it with that open mind and that desire to learn, as opposed to that desire to protect yourself, because I have a bit of a habit of wanting to protect myself because it's my baby. But I didn't. I made sure that I went in with the right attitude, and I got the most out of it by doing that.
So here's what I appreciate about how you described your experience. You actually gave some really, in that description, gave some really great advice on how to navigate the Big Fix. I think you might be the first person, and I have to think back, you might be the first person to say that you prepared for it. That's interesting. That's interesting perspective. The Big Fix can be like drinking from a fire hose, kind of, right? You're getting all of this stuff thrown at you. And what I'm hearing you say is that you prepared yourself to be open to what might be criticism, be open to suggestions, be open because this is your baby. You kind of already have an idea of, what it's about, but just being open to receiving whatever may come your way. And I think that's great, because that perspective allows you now to just gather in everything. And then at some point you have the opportunity to sift through everything you've gathered and decide, hey, I want to keep this, and no, I don't want to keep that. This thing aligns, this thing doesn't. But that's an interesting perspective. Is there anything that came out of that experience? And I'll talk a little bit about what the experience looks like from a logistics standpoint. But is there anything that came out of that experience that you're like, okay, yeah, this has to get implemented like ASAP?
I think I'd heard a lot of it before.
Okay.
Because mine was about messaging, so trying to understand my messaging. Because as much as I love what I do and I know how to do it and I do it really well, I don't know how to communicate that with people.
Gotcha.
So that was kind of what I went there for. So a lot of it I'd heard before, but it was good to have the two different perspectives. So you get the perspective of the people in the room, and then you get the report after. Which offers you so I was able to take notes at the time because I'd set myself up. I was able to take those notes and be aware of, I like that idea, I don't like that idea in the moment. Gotcha. But then to go back over the notes and then get a Larry's report and compare, that was really good to have that space to come away from it. And you know, it is a little bit intimidating because you've got people from different industries, you've got people from different parts of the world. They know more than you in certain things, and they know less about your particular thing. But to come away from that then with all the information I had, all the suggestions, the thoughts, the opinions, the offerings, and then compare what I had and what I'd seen and heard with a Larry's report, that was a brilliant thing to be able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you got that. And that's a fantastic, I love the assessment, right? Because, and what I tell people, and I didn't tell you this before we got on, but normally what I tell people is be honest about your experience. Because I've talked to someone who was like, man, it was daunting for me, you know, and it can be, right? Because let's face it, you are, like you said, this is your baby. And you're actually laying this baby down in front of a group of folk that a lot of them you do not know. And some people, in some cases, don't know any of the people, right? And you're allowing them to make assessments and ask questions about this baby and provide solutions about this baby. And that can be a daunting experience. Let me say this. It is something I highly recommend. Again, going back to something that Hayley said and that we expounded on, the transformation doesn't happen in a comfortable space. So although the big fix, it may feel like, man, I don't want to be in the hot seat, I'm not sure about this. Preparation is great. I love what Hayley said, preparing herself from a psychological standpoint and her perspective. And then understanding that, hey, the discomfort, which actually doesn't last for a very long time, because you quickly realize that all of these folk love you automatically, like from jump. They just, you know, the first day we had met Hayley was a superstar. So, you know, it's like, and that's how everybody's treated in this space. And what you get to do is, I love that you mentioned the report, because what happens is everything that you get is now compiled into a report. You have two options. You can either take that report, go off and be great, do what you need to do with it. You can also take that report and come back to the group, because there are individuals that are very strategically placed to help you in the implementation process as well. So that's awesome. I love that you got through that experience. It is a 2-day experience for those of you who want to understand more about that. There are different faces that come in those 2 days, and sometimes the perspective you got on day one is not the same perspective you get on day two, because there's sometimes a different group of individuals. So on your screen is a way to schedule the big fix. And even if you don't want to be in the hot seat, if you just want to come and experience it and lend your own expertise to whoever's in the hot seat, you can reach out on that email address there, or you can reach out to me on whatever platform you're watching this on. You got to get into this and you got to experience it. It is a phenomenal way to gather information that can help move the needle in your business. Okay, so Hayley, man, there's so much more I want to ask you, but we're coming down to the end. Maybe we'll do this again one day. There's several guests that I think I need to do a part 2 with, and I think you're one of those. Thank you so much for sharing your story, number one, because it is a personal story. And although personal stories help to fuel purpose in others, it is personal. And so we have to respect that. And so I do respect your willingness to share today with me. Before I let you go, there's two things I want. I want some advice from you, and then I want to know how to get in touch with you. But first, for the advice piece, two pieces of advice I'm asking you for. One, and I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Can I switch it up a little bit? Normally, I ask for advice for entrepreneurs, but I want to ask advice now for individuals who you gave some indicators in the beginning of some signs of depression and anxiety. I want you to give some advice. First piece of advice is for those people who listen to those indicators and are like, wait a minute, that's me. What should their first step be?
The first step is to understand who is their trusted source of support. Is it somebody within their reach, their immediate reach, or is it somebody professional that they need to reach out to? Because there's different levels of how you're feeling. So finding out, is there somebody you can immediately reach out to who can support you to reach out to somebody professional, or do you need to immediately go to a professional?
So evaluate who's around what's around you in terms of way of support. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. The second piece of advice is going to be for entrepreneurs. So for those of us who are in the entrepreneurial space, we talk about entrepreneurship being a journey. Is there any advice that you can give from your experience as you've been developing a business that you feel like is important for us as entrepreneurs?
I think this goes for everybody, but it does definitely go for entrepreneurs, because I think we are terrible at looking after ourselves, particularly if you have a business and other responsibilities. So this piece of advice is you are the most important person in your world, your business world, your family world. You are the most important person. And yet, if you look at where you are on your priority list, I guarantee you are not at least in the top 5 yet.
Wow.
So let's get you into the top 2. If you've got children, you've got a business, we need you in the top 2. That's not to say that I'm asking you to put anything else out of your mind. But by looking after yourself, you can give the best version of yourself in your business, to your children, to your partner, and invest in that person who is going to do all of those things. You have high expectations of yourself. So you may as well look after yourself to meet those high expectations.
That's good. We got to get you in the top 2.
Yes.
Wow. Listen, I got to, after the show, I'm going to have to do some evaluation myself. Like, see where do I fall? Am I in the top 2? I got to look at that. And that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Last thing before we let you go is, how can we get in touch with you? We've heard your story. We see the transformation that you can provide. How do we get in contact with you to be able to work with you?
So you can find me on social media as Hayley T. Wheeler, or you can email me on hayley@hayleytwheeler.co.uk. Just let me know if you want to have a chat, if you just want to discuss what's been said today. I'm open to having those conversations, because I think a conversation can change the world.
That is awesome. And I'm going to highlight you right now, because Hayley has on the screen her information. So you see Hayley T. Wheeler, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and her email address right there. You also get to see she has a little diagram of what happens in the emotion mind dynamic. You want to make sure that you are connecting with her. Her LinkedIn is also in the description of wherever you are watching this right now, so you can connect with her there as well. Listen, can I just give you a round of applause? Thank you so much for being a part of this. I don't want you to go yet. I'm gonna put you backstage, but I don't want you to go yet, because I just want to say a word or two after the show is done to you. But thank you for taking out some time to hang out with me. Time is valuable, so I don't take it lightly that you are willing to hang out with me in this space today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. We'll talk it momentarily. All right. That's Hayley Wheeler. And I told you in the beginning, I warned you. I said, get out your note taking devices. So if you were not taking notes, you need to go back through this and take some notes. You heard Hayley's story. You heard the transformation that she experienced and now provides for others. She shared some indicators that are very important to be looking at to build your self awareness around where you are so that you know what you need to do. She gave some phenomenal advice. She told you what your superpower is. She also talked about what you can do as entrepreneurs and that you need to find yourself in the top 2. And if you're not in the top 2, there's some work that needs to be done. Go back and watch this. If you didn't, there's so many gems in this. You need to go back and watch it so that you can catch them all. Self-care is so important, like I talked about in the beginning. And so go back and watch that as well if you need to. Listen, there's nothing else to say. So much, it's mind blowing. So much was said. You got to go back and watch it all. Hayley Wheeler is a phenomenal individual. Make sure that you're connecting with her so that you can get the transformation that she provides. All right. That's another episode of The Life of an Entrepreneur. I am Oliver Marcel. Again, this show is brought to you by Love Entrepreneurs, which is a fellowship of individuals that want to help ordinary people build extraordinary businesses. They do this with something called the Big Fix. Matter of fact, there is a Big Fix that starts in 10 minutes. So if you want to be a part of it, shoot me a message. I'll get you into that Big Fix that starts in 10 minutes. But you need to be a part of that. If you're looking to move the needle in your business in any way, that is an experience that I implore you to check out. All right. Another episode of Life of an Entrepreneur. I'm Oliver Marcel. Remember, the life of an entrepreneur is a journey. We want you to enjoy the journey. We'll see you next time.